Your health is the most important thing you can invest in. Hey guys, this is Dr. Brendan Cochran from Interactive Health Clinic. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm going to bring you a little update. What the heck is going on with all the interesting things with this virus? All right, first thing I want to talk about is dexamethasone hit the news, and I saw that stuff plastered all over Facebook, social media, everywhere as the miracle to basically reduce the risk of death from COVID-19, the life-saving drug, right? Like it's some brand new thing. Here's the problem with it. It dropped your numbers from about 40% mortality to 28% mortality when people are on ventilators, and 25 to only 20%, so 5% difference for patients needing oxygen to cut that risk. That's still a lot of mortality risk compared to what we can do a lot better than that, I believe. And what that looks like is we're intervening a lot sooner rather than waiting until we're about ready to put a person on a ventilator or they need oxygen. And we've talked about some of those things in the other videos. So that's one thing I have with this. Yes, it is a movement. I totally get you. You're going to say, some of you, hey, this is better than what we got currently. And I disagree with you. We have better things. This is also not a new finding. All right, we've known about this since April 24th when the MATH protocol was released. The MATH protocol talked about using methylprednisolone and using vitamin C therapy, using low molecular weight heparin, plus things like thiamine, zinc, and vitamin D. All those things we have talked about in some of our previous videos, except for the thiamine piece, which I haven't mentioned yet. So we know this, and you know, you could probably get a lot better than 28% or 20% death rate if you started to add things like vitamin C, you started to add things like the anticoagulants. We already know this. This is not new information. So when it got blasted all over the place, I'm like, really? Are we that slow that we have to wait this long to repeat ourselves again? We already have the protocol. You know, the people who are doing this MATH protocol, their mortality rate is somewhere in the single digits, but nobody's listening to them. Instead, we're focusing on finding the new drug, finding the new big time remdesivir drug that's going to cost us thousands of dollars, that your pharmacy companies are going to make a shitload because the federal government and the FDA is got their heads up their butts. All right. The bottom line is that's kind of where we're still at. We're still looking for that drug that's going to make a crap ton of money for a specific company. And then they're going to fund the FDA. So the FDA gets their cut to process this as well. We're still there. We're still in this political battle, this constant money battle versus actually coming out with a treatment that we see works pretty good in different centers. So to remind you, that was the MATH protocol. The other one I want to remind you about, and this was published back in like April as well, and then it was updated again, and it continues to be updated. So it was even updated yesterday again by the EVMS group, which is Eastern Virginia Medical Group, and they looked at using the MATH protocol, but they also have a very, very succinct protocol of how they go about things, right? And I think it's great. Prophylactically, what do we have? We have things like vitamin C, we have zinc, we have melatonin, we have vitamin D, we even have famotidine or Pepcid on there as well now. Pepcid is an antihistamine that also people use for GERD and heartburn, and we have that on there. And we know that we've used Pepcid in a number of other chronic virus conditions as an immune stimulator. So that's kind of in the prophylaxis group. Then we also have symptomatic patients at home, and it's pretty much the same thing, except now we're adding an anticoagulant, or we're adding something like ivermectin, or, you know, we used to use hydroxychloroquine. Now in this new update, they're taking that off because you've heard the FDA basically pull hydroxychloroquine from the market, saying it doesn't work. And that's the whole other discussion. As we know, um, it does work if it's given very, very early. However, now it's not on the list to be used in the US. And the FDA made that nice call for you, taking away your doctor's liberty to treat patients once again. Thank you, FDA, for that. So we go on now, and we also see the mild symptomatic patients grows even more. Similar things, and now we get into optional IV dosages and interventions with CPAP or BiPAP. We're not jumping to the ventilator right away. And then in the late stages, now we get into that methylprednisone IV dosage with vitamin C. And that's the key that was not published in the dexamethasone thing. Is vitamin C was on here, anticoagulants were on there, and zinc is still on there as well. The other thing I want to talk about is thiamine. So we really haven't talked about thiamine a lot. And bottom line, the reason thiamine came up is thiamine was used in an older trial a couple of years ago when we first started looking at vitamin C, thiamine, and hydrocortisone, a low dose steroid basically, in helping people with sepsis. And it was one of those pieces. And specifically, that B1 happens to help a lot of cofactors, which helps with some of the collateral damage that can happen with sepsis and organ failure. So that's why it kind of made its jump back on the math protocol as one of those things to be used as well. So like you see on this document again, you will see this is nothing new. We have had this for a while. And if you talk to these fellows, they're getting pretty dang good results. Like I said, in the teens or lower, or I should say not teens, single digits or lower in their percentage of death rate. So that is really good if it is that low. And so to come out and say, hey, dexamethasone is the new drug, bum, 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 it's just another BS story. Kind of like when remdesivir came out, kind of like when Moderna suddenly published and boost themselves so they could get increased stock and make more money, only to come out and say, well, it's not as good as what we thought it was. And then they, sold everything off to make their money, right? So unfortunately, a lot of crookedness is still going on. FDA is involved with this. Drug companies are involved with this. A lot of political BS is still going on. Now, something we didn't want to see has happened. This happened. So a Dallas woman tested positive for coronavirus again, 4 months after having it the first time. First time she went through it, she reported she had a wicked cough, did manage at home, but felt really poorly, and now came back into the hospital with a very high blood pressure, headache, and tested again positive. Now, some of you might say, well, maybe she tested false positive the first time. The issue was when she got it the first time, she also donated antibodies so that way she could help other people fight this, right? We donate antibodies and then they can use it. It's pretty rare that you're going to have a person that tests positive, that has antibodies, that we harvest antibodies for this virus to be positive and fail all of that. I understand if they just had a test, they could possibly test positive when they were not positive. But to go through all that, it's very, very rare that happens. Now, how is it that this person got infected again 4 months later? There's a lot of answers we don't know. And that's why a lot of you don't want to be experimenting and trying to get this, because we just don't know. I mean, is this a reactivation? Meaning, when we talked earlier, we saw South Korea was concerned that possibly this goes into a dormant state like some viruses do and then reactivates? Or is it more like the cold virus where you get it and then 2 to 3 months later you can get it again, right? And so we don't know. That's the bottom line. We still got to learn more. This is one case that we've seen. And we don't know why. Maybe her immune system didn't mount antibodies that worked. They just mounted antibodies. Remember, you can mount antibodies, but they actually have to be productive antibodies and work. If they're just antibodies and they don't do anything, it doesn't really help you that much. And that's one thing that is really, if this is true, this is really going to kill any hopes of a vaccine working, because you can mount an antibody response to the vaccine. However, what will happen is they may not be active antibodies, they may not work. And we saw this with some of the other trials with Sears and Mayers and some of those. So we still have a lot to learn with this, a lot more to go. But this is definitely very concerning why this person didn't do that, because this may turn into another common cold thing where you literally get rolled over by this thing a couple times per year. That would be very, very scary, because we know some people, for whatever reason, they still have ongoing chronic symptoms of loss of smell, ongoing body pains, autoimmune flare ups, you name it. So, one of the things I want to talk about a little bit more that this brings up is we've had several people that have come in asking for antibody tests, and we've done those antibody tests because they say, I swear I had this thing. And most of those have tested negative. They do not have antibodies. So that either means that they didn't have it, or maybe they never mounted antibodies, like in this case, or maybe they did mount antibodies, but they cleared very, very rapidly. Again, so many questions that we still have to answer. I know in our clinic, we're going to start running some repeat antibodies on some people that we know had antibodies a couple months later, and start to see if they're still present or not. And if they are still present, again, the thing I can't answer is, are they still effective or are they not effective? That I don't know yet. I think that's a large question that still needs to be answered. But definitely very, very concerning. You do not want to get this. So how do we prevent getting this? Again, we balance the terrain. The other thing we do is we wear freaking masks. We quit arguing and bickering and complaining about not wearing a mask, right? We know masks work. We even saw a good case study of a salon down south that had two people that were hairstylists that had symptoms that were at work. And they, over the course of the days, saw 140 people. Not one of those people that they saw got infected. And why? Good hygiene. So the hairstylist was wearing a mask, and the person getting the haircut was wearing a mask as well. So those are key things for us to move forward and not spread this thing like wildfire, because the US, we're doing a pretty crappy job. We're kind of like level while everybody else is actually kind of going down. So this thing is very active. I mean, if you look at Texas, Arizona right now, there's some hot spots that hospitals are getting in trouble. Arizona, there's some hot spots that hospitals are struggling a little bit. So this is real. It is coming. And like I said, if we learn to protect ourselves, wear masks, distance, and also balance the terrain. So the big one we've been talking about in the past was vitamin D. And this specific article here that I'm sharing with you talked about the University of Chicago medicine. They actually looked at patients who had vitamin D deficiencies. And what they discovered was, if a person had a vitamin D deficiency, they were 77% more likely to get this virus than a person that did not have a vitamin D deficiency. 77%. Isn't that amazing? That's a simple intervention, is to make sure your vitamin D levels are optimized. Now, how do you do that? You take vitamin D, right? The other thing is, you make sure you're working with a provider that understands the value in testing vitamin D, so you're actually getting your levels up, and you're not buying some garbage that says 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, but actually just has rice powder, dirt, or maybe even worse, lead in it, like some companies a couple years ago in the big box brand stores that most people like to shop at because they're really, really cheap. were found to have in them. They just had dirt and rice. They had no active ingredient in there at all. And that's part of the problem. If you're paying for something really cheap, there's no quality control, there's no testing being done on that product. They didn't spend the extra money on that. You're likely getting crap, literally crap in a pill, some dirt in a pill. So, really, if you don't know, you really should put it to the test, have your levels drawn, and actually check that your levels are sufficient, because we know this profoundly affects your abilities to get respiratory infections. The other top one on my choice that we talked about before is elderberry. Elderberry has been well known to help prevent respiratory infections. We don't have a direct study with coronavirus. However, we have studies with other coronaviruses and influenza on drastically reducing the chances of getting it and drastically reducing the severity if you do get it. So we have those tools. We need to promote those tools. We cannot let up now, because trust me, you don't want to get sidewind with this thing. You don't want to end up with a $1 million hospital bill like we just saw on the news not too long ago, where a person literally got a $1 million bill for being in the hospital. If you're relying on your insurance, you shouldn't. Your insurance isn't going to help you, right? They're going to cover a certain percentage and slap you with a massive bill. And even if you exceed a certain amount, you're still going to end up with a bill. I've seen it multiple times. People that are bankrupt the most in this country have insurance. They are bankrupt for medical costs and they have insurance. So if you are one of those that says, it will not happen to me, I'm not going to take any of this advice and be proactive with my health, that's fine. It may be cheap right now, but I guarantee you it's going to be a mountain slide on you later when your health crumbles. So really, really important that you take your health seriously, be proactive with your health. Get on it now. Hope you like this content. Again, remember, share this content, hit the like button. If you have anything you want me to go over or talk about, please let me know. You have a fantastic weekend. This is another really good incentive to invest in your health. Investing in your health is the best thing you could ever invest in.